Have another one tomorrow. Big 12 pod. This is UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, and BYU. Craig, what's the name of this pod?
No, Craig put it out to the chat to give the name
what
for
did they
this
say?
pod. I got some notes. I got some notes from yesterday.
All right.
When he put it out. So this is either the newbie pod, the scrappy pod, the replacements pod, the rank pod, which I didn't understand that one, the Bob Bowlesby pod, which that's my favorite one, or the Staying Alive pod.
Craig, you want to?
I like newbie and Bowlesby, and the Staying Alive is fitting. Maybe we should name it the Bowlesby pod in honor of.
I think.
Yeah,
honor of him
Bowlesby
being
pod.
the one that helped usher that in.
I know he takes still even this day heat, but that has to be in his name.
It's like what the NHL conferences are named after, or no, it's
Wait
like
a
their
minute.
conference trophies are named after
like
people.
Conn Smythe.
Yeah,
and all that
Was,
stuff.
was Bowlesby those four, or was
Yeah, he was those four.
Okay,
He
that's
was the
right.
one,
No,
yeah.
I'm thinking about the four
That's what
corners.
he
You're
had
right.
to
Yeah, he
do
was
right
those
after
four.
Yeah,
Oklahoma
that's
and
right.
Texas.
That's right.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I thank everybody for their contributions. I think there are some that definitely could work as well, but I think for the sake of just kind of like specificity and clarity, I think Bowlesby probably works well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's go with the Bowlesby division, and if we tinker with it later, but I think that's a good start. But, yeah, I appreciate everybody who contributed to that. I would, if only BYU wasn't independent, it could have just been the American pod because that was 3/4 of the teams. But that's great that that we had the responses that we had. So thank you.
All right, so we start with UCF. They had the off week. They have an incredible running game. KJ Jefferson did a little bit better last time he was out, and my goodness, the big noon kickoff will be all over in the middle of Orlando. You talk about the Knights, the fans. They will be just absolutely phenomenal this weekend as they host Dion, Travis Hunter, Shador, Wester and company, and the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah, this is not a great matchup for Colorado because of the way that UCF runs the ball. It's at the bounce house. Everybody's excited. Like they're preparing Memory Mall right now for big noon kickoff that's going to be there. And while, I know that the Colorado, because they do it every week, they'll get their shots in, but I just don't think that they can stop KJ Jefferson, RJ Harvey, and everybody else from running the ball right down their throat. Even though they've gotten slightly better at that, this is a mismatch offensive line, defensive line-wise, and the running backs and the quarterback are just too good at moving the ball.
Yeah, this is a really interesting game. UCF coming off of the open week, had the thriller of a win, beating TCU, one of the best wins in program history, and just the style that it took place. And I've loved what I've seen from, in particular, the running game. Still some other areas that need to improve, but KJ Jefferson seemed to put that opening week performance behind him, has gotten better every week, and RJ Harvey's that guy. But, yeah, just as a whole, it's hard to imagine Colorado's defense, even though they are clearly improved up front, of just getting smashed over and over and over again or slipped through by this running attack from UCF, and then sprinkling in the passing game wherever you do. So UCF, last I looked, is pretty heavy favorites in this game, like double-digit favorites, 2-touchdown favorites in some cases, and the predictor machines that I've seen all have them as very heavy favorites at the bounce house. So looking like they've got a very good shot to go 4-0. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. You wonder, all the talk about Baylor and a hangover, what about Colorado?
Yeah.
Like all the emotional outpouring to win that game, they're now going to enemy territory in a place that's going to be crazy, but against them, which I know they're kind of used to that, but there's something to be said for them having a little bit of an emotional hangover as well. They've got the players to make this interesting, but I think UCF's got more of the overall team and the elements at their backing and the rest and all that comes with that. So I like UCF here. And, hey, you start talking about where's BYU ranking. If they win this game, they're 4-0, and they'd be 2-0 in the conference because, remember, they already beat TCU. So they got started before everybody else by a week. So that would be a terrific start for Gus Malzahn and company.
Well, it's Colorado, I don't know if they run on that emotional roller coaster, but they had was an emotional win against Colorado State, which even Dion said it meant something to him personally. and then they have that game. So there might be a little bit of that. I just think they play so free and easy. Not that they always play perfectly or whatever, but we're talking about UCF. But that'll be interesting. Hell of a game. Great opportunity for the Big 12 with big noon kickoff.
Hey, if Colorado does go and win that game, you want to talk about like ways to get attention on the league. Have a 4-1 Colorado with a 2-0 start in the Big 12, and then have them getting ready to play. I believe it's like K-State and like Arizona, which is not as big of a deal right now, but K-State would be right after that. So that would be interesting because Colorado would probably find itself in the top 25 with a win over UCF. So, and UCF with a win probably finds itself perhaps in the top 25. Or I mean, there's a better chance for that. So yeah, this is an interesting game based on last weekend and Colorado's showing. But I like UCF on some rest here.
All right, so that's one game in the Big 12. We're doing our pods. This is the Bob Bowlesby pod. The 4 schools that joined once Texas and Oklahoma decided they would move on. We now move to Houston. Smoked by Cincinnati 34-0. Iowa State 18th in the country. Kind of a team that just wears you out. Pretty good. Bunch of players back. And Iowa State down in Houston against Willie Fritz and company. Houston, man, they're on fumes, but and I don't know what it is. They had the game against Texas last year, different team, different coaching staff, but they almost beat Oklahoma. Now we've seen a little bit of what Oklahoma's about, but the Cougars just in need of playing well. And Iowa State's not somebody you can make mistakes against and hope to have a chance to win the game.
I think when it comes to Houston compared to Iowa State has continuity from a year ago, all that. Houston's starting from scratch, essentially. And that's why this is a bad matchup just on the surface of, look, Houston has to, put all this together. Well, Matt Campbell built a team that's now still pretty much together from a year ago, and it was young guys last year that played above expectations and now are meeting those expectations so far early in the season. So, yeah, I think this is more about Willie Fritz just starting out. Matt Campbell's been in this for a minute, and Iowa State's just deeper and better right now than Houston is.
All right.
Yeah, they're not even in the same plane.
Donovan Smith gets the start again.
Who?
Donovan Smith will get the start,
yeah.
but they are that could be a quick a short leash.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know really what they plan on doing with that, but he's not been good. And I don't know. I found it so interesting during the offseason talking about Houston and Donovan Smith and talking about, like, hey, there's things to like, but there's also a lot of things to not really like that much, in particular the turnovers. And then we started to get closer to the season, and all of a sudden, remember we started talking about all these NFL reports that were coming out on him, or at least these little blurbs and whatnot about Donovan Smith, and like his family's got NFL ties, obviously his father. He's got great size, things like that. And just with somebody, in the draft pre-college football season discussions over the summer, they got brought up a little bit. And, I mean, he's done nothing to make that seem realistic. It's been bad. So 3 turnovers last week helped doom them against Cincinnati, but I think Cincinnati is a pretty good team. And Houston's just not very good. They're the worst team in the league. I think that's pretty clear. I feel like they could maybe with a good performance, like squeeze out a game or two here and there. But if you're losing 34-0 to Cincinnati, even if the Bearcats are pretty good, like that's just not gonna bode well for the games moving forward when you're playing better teams. So I think it's very much a year one. Just trying to take positives where you can get them, and that's about it. But I'm not gonna for any single second here think they're gonna really give Iowa State much of a test.
Yeah.
I don't see that. So I think it's going to be another loss for Houston, 0-2 in conference, and I think they're going to pretty much reside in that 16 spot each week the rest of the way. That's just sort of where they are right now, and that's part of just starting over from scratch and what Dana Holgerson left you.
Zion Chris is the backup. He's from Baton Rouge. He played a couple of years at the University of Louisiana. Played a lot last year. Threw for 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns. He has only thrown 5 passes, but apparently he will get playing time against Iowa State this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. When you said that Donovan Smith will start, I never doubted that for a second. But getting the young guy in there and getting some reps, that makes a lot of sense when you're not building for this year. You're building for next year and the year after, and that's clear. Like maybe if they had won that Oklahoma game and then they, had a couple and they're 2-2, but instead they're 1-3. They're probably going to be 1-4, and we'll see how the rest of the schedule goes. But there's a lot more losses out there for them. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Zion Chris because maybe that's a guy who flashes something, and you can start to build around that. It's just very unfortunate that they have had such a hard time there with Donovan Smith not ever really being able to find that consistency.
Yeah, and the NFL stuff that starts to pop out on random quarterbacks like Graham Mertz and
especially
Donovan Smith in the summer usually comes from Pro Football Focus.
Yeah.
And they have a completely different way of evaluating things than most.
That's not always explained either.
It's not explained like you know, and I'm not knocking their guys, but like, you know, part of it I think is what Chris Collinsworth likes because he's the head of it and like then tells them to look a certain way. So, yeah, I think that's what happened with Donovan Smith in particular is that Pro Football Focus, you know, put all these metrics on him, and then he's like, I don't know if you guys ever watched the full game of
I
him.
was gobsmacked when I saw the talk about that because I was like, the way that he turned, like I get the measurables and all of that. Like I wondered what I was missing. And I'm not a talent scout by any means, but I've watched a lot of him at Tech and at Houston, and there's a lot of interceptions, and not really huge stats. And so
That's been his MO, yeah.
I didn't know what that was really coming from other than like his size and all of that. But yeah, that's been totally washed away with the performances through this first month to the point that Zion Chris is probably going to start seeing playing time. So there you go.
Yeah, and
But hey, you kind of expected this, right? If you were Houston, like you knew coming in, you probably weren't going to be very good. I don't know, it might be worse than expected for some people, but you were never, I don't think, anticipating this was going to be some big rah-rah season. This was going to be the toughest season of the Willie Fritz era. That's just got to be what you hope is the case, and I don't see why that won't be the case because I do think he'll get it right with more time, but it's a year one.
He's got the quarterback coming in if he can keep him, the kid from Willis, right?
Yeah.
Where DJ Lagway was.
That's a couple more years, though.
Yeah, is it Willis? It is. He's
Players
from
Willis,
yeah,
but he's still 2 years out.
Yeah, he's still 2 years out. Now, Cincinnati, they are the ones who bloodied Houston 34-0. Satterfield and company seem like they got a pretty good thing going on the road against the Fighting Kim Coulters. And Kim kind of has said that he doesn't expect the Red Raiders to lose again. They're on a hot streak after when they beat Arizona State. Gave them their first loss. Kim is all in the middle. And by the way, with the 365 Sports tailgating tent, we appreciate
I don't think you got that message Paul and I did over the weekend. I saw a bunch of those pictures.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
I'm no longer apparently a part of the Kim Coulter group.
Oh, really?
I go, like, hey, did you see these pictures? And he's like, no. And I was like, oh, so my bad, Kim. I blew up the spot.
Hey,
But,
Kim.
but it looked like the tent is freaking ridiculous.
No, it's
like,
fantastic. Yeah, they do.
you're representing us out in Lubbock, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas Tech is the only program ever to play all 12 regular season games at home.
It feels like it really does feel like
No,
that.
they played at Washington State.
Yeah, but they've only been but the problem that sucks for them is that means their home games are front loaded and they're going to have more on the road in the back.
Arizona, TCU, Iowa
all
State,
that, which makes it tough. But I'll take Tech in this one because they're at home. I think that Cincinnati's certainly an improved team. Their offense is way better. Brendan Sorsby's been good and less of an adventure than Emory Jones was. So yeah, I'll take Tech in this one. But I do think Cincinnati's going to put up a fight for sure.
I think that every coach is going to respect his opponent and talk them up no matter who they are or where they are in the standings and things like that. But I think there was really some genuine backing to that when Joey McGuire was talking about how much he expects this to be a great game and how much he respects Scott Satterfield in Cincinnati. I take Tech here. Big reason why is this game is in Lubbock. I would also take them neutral site. I don't know about Cincinnati. It would be interesting, but I do think Tech's a slightly better team. And I think that win for them last weekend was obviously huge, but that was a big deal for Cincinnati to, find Brendan Sorsby and to get off to this 3-1 start and to handle Houston, especially which Houston just don't really know. Like, they look bad, but then they play Oklahoma with, like, you just don't really know. And then Cincinnati just goes and shoves them into a locker and punks them. And so that was a really good sign that they just handled their business and moved on. I think going to Lubbock, though, and playing at night, there is an element there that is dangerous and probably too much to overcome. But we'll see. Brendan Sorsby's a gamer, man. He's a good player. He's not perfect by any means, but he's enough of a threat that he can go in there and win if Texas Tech, doesn't take care of the football or doesn't play well on defense, things that we've seen this year, they open the door, and Cincinnati's got enough weapons with Sorsby and Xavier Henderson and others, especially that running game and Corey Kiner. They can make this an interesting game. So I do think that Joey McGuire's onto something. It's not just coach speak. I think they're expecting a real fight here, but I will take Tech. I like, though, where Cincinnati is at the start here. And, hey, look, you go and steal one, then shoot.
No.
You're on to a different path there.
Then you have a couple of teams that were thought to be near the bottom with BYU and Cincinnati that maybe they're this year's West Virginia. Who knows? By the way, defensively, both aren't doing well. Cincinnati, 90th. In the country, Tech 120. Offense, though, Tech is the 15th highest-rated offense in America, total yards, and Cincinnati not far behind at 23, so they're very mirror-like on what they're doing statistically.
Yeah, Sorsby's made a huge difference just in making Cincinnati more watchable. Functional on offense. So I've loved seeing him. Hasn't thrown a pick this season. I think that's what's going to – like, who has better quarterback play? Because Baron Morton can be good. He can also be very shaky. Brendan Sorsby's been pretty good. He's had some moments, though, that you'd like to take back, particularly like the Pitt game when they ended up losing what should have been a winnable game there. But, I think Cincinnati is improved, and I think they're going to give Tech hell. But I do feel like Lubbock is a little bit too high of a mountain to climb for them, at least this week.
So I am no longer in the Kim Coulter text chat thing, I guess, huh? All right.
I mean, look. Sometimes you know maybe.
No. I believe me.
Just figured you were with Nebraska.
Really cool pictures that we got.
I have one with
plus some
our
stock
friend,
tips.
Retired stockbroker is and I talked last night. Then we had one that was a combo with Paxton and Kim, which got off the rails like it always will. Those two now are buddies. I don't mind throwing out stuff that's out there since I'm no longer in the Kim Coulter fan club or whatever. Now, the last team on this list, and BYU coming to Waco, and what a great win against Kansas State. That stadium tomorrow, of Saturday, it'll be filled because there'll be a lot of white and blue. Let's be honest, Baylor fans are on and off, of course, like most are, but will be interesting to see how much of that 40-plus thousand will be the amazing fan base at BYU when they travel because they're everywhere with their religion, but also the love of their football team.
Yeah, they make a bunch of Mormons every day, for sure. But they travel really well. Their team is playing confident and together. Again, like last week, they did some spectacular things happened. You know, the punt return and some other things, but they're getting it done by just not making mistakes. Like that's what they're doing. They muddied the water so badly against SMU that SMU couldn't get out and establish anything. So much so that they changed their quarterback, and they just play within themselves really well. I mean, it's kind of coach speak, but they're not doing things to lose games. And then if you don't do that. If you don't do things to lose games, then all of a sudden you start doing things to win games in Congress with that, and that's what's gone on during this four-game start for them, where they're 4-0. Is just look, you can't control that. Some of the teams are going to have faster or bigger or stronger guys, but you can't control your own mistakes. And when you do that and you make the other guys make mistakes, then all of a sudden you start winning.
Yeah, I think they're much better than I expected them to be. I didn't really know what to expect with BYU, and Jake Retzloff wasn't some sexy name that you're like, oh, they've got this star quarterback and blah, blah, blah. And he's not even like the main particular reason why they're winning either. It's a combination of factors. It's just a great overall team effort, really. But kudos to Kalani Sitake. I mean, he's got them playing really well, playing really confident, and really embracing the fact that not a lot was expected of them coming into this season and being able to embrace proving people wrong because they believed in themselves. You know, a lot of language like that coming out of that game last weekend, which I just think speaks to a really healthy culture. And obviously that was a huge win in an insane atmosphere. That is not what they're playing in this week. I think that matters. I think playing on a Saturday night, Mountain Time, at home, full whiteout, and then you have just the avalanche of turnovers and touchdowns and just that middle eight that you see a 6-0 lead for Kansas State turn into a 31-6 BYU lead in like less than 30 minutes or whatever. I don't remember what actual time it was, but you take the middle 8, and they pretty much took 6-0 and made it 31-6 practically.
Yep.
And I don't foresee that. But I mean, what an amazing just. I use the word I mean, it was just like they just took
Momentum's
that game.
a hell of a thing, man.
It was the moment. I've never seen momentum like that. I mean, it's just over and over and over until like just that crowd. I don't think they could have gotten louder, or else that whole place would have just blown up. I mean, it was so chaotic. So that's not what they're walking into this week, but they will be walking in with a lot of confidence. This is basically a toss-up game. Retzloff's played well. That defense has been outstanding. That SMU game, they held SMU to 5 field goals. They didn't give up a single touchdown in that game, and that's what they're going to probably be able to do for the most part against Baylor. Baylor's going to have to score touchdowns in this game. They cannot settle for field goals. They're going to have to score touchdowns, which is easier said than done, but especially given that Jay Hill, heart attack, the whole episode, and not that long ago, mind you, the fact that he just got back to work and this defense is playing so well is an incredible story. They obviously did what they did against SMU to K-State by holding them to field goals as well. So in their 2 big premier matchups, they've given up they've given up no touchdowns.
Yep.
Now, those turnovers last week, you look at where they were, a lot of those were like at the 30 of Kansas State was driving, right, and just could not seal the deal, whether finishing a drive or turning the ball over. So they can be moved on, but man, they will make a big explosive play, and they will bottle them up, and in the blink of an eye, you could be down big. So Baylor's going to have to avoid the big mistakes. I mean, they're just going to have to find a way to avoid those, because I think that's ultimately what this game comes down to. I don't think anybody else imposes their will on the other. I don't think one's more like that much more physical than the other. And I don't think there's really many matchups where you're that much more impressive than the other. I think it's going to come down, like most Big 12 games will, to home field advantage and also who makes the least amount of mistakes.
If there's home field advantage.
I mean, there usually is, maybe not in this case. But
because BYU's bringing some folks.
Well, BYU's not going to have a home field advantage, not like they had last week.
They will. It's not going to be like there's just like 500 people either.
No, Sawyer Robertson should not be panicking all, like Avery Johnson in that environment last week, which was understandable to some extent. So I like BYU. They need to be mentioned with the top tier. They're top 25. If they win this weekend, man, that's really setting them up nicely, because you'd be nearly at bowl eligibility. So that would be an incredible win to get on the road and have 2 wins in the state of Texas in the first 5 weeks.
Absolutely.
Would also be a really big deal for them, and it's entirely possible.
Greg Wrubell, the voice of BYU, had this note earlier. He's had some great nuggets. BYU point totals allowed 13, 15, 14, and 9. Under Dave Aranda, even with the team in 2021, Baylor is 0-13 if they score less than 20 points.
That's a damn neat stat. The worst one to me is the 0-9 in their last 9 top 25 games.
Who?
Baylor.
Oh, no, yeah. Yeah, no, I know.
That is
I know.
ridiculous.
Yep.
0-9.
And they can get one this weekend, but I think I'm going to pick BYU to win the game until – and again, I liked what I saw from Baylor in Boulder in many ways other than 3 or 4 brain farts.
I wrote this in my article today. Do you know the last time Baylor beat a top 25 team?
Ole Miss?
Yeah, it was the Sugar Bowl against Ole Miss 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Was the last time.
Actually, yeah.
The Sugar Bowl win. They are 0-9 in the last 2 seasons, and so here we go. They're going to either be 0-10 or they're going to get a very much needed win, and BYU will have that first blemish on their record. But these two have a short but pretty good little history. There's obviously a lot of respect between the two fan bases, so I think it should be a fun environment. And I'm leaning Baylor just slightly, but if you pick BYU, I don't fault you at all.
I said it in my prediction today, and I picked BYU. I think the thing's the same. Like, there are better things than last year, obviously. Like, there's a lot of good things that you can compare to last year. But for me, they're still lacking, and it was just highlighted last week. They don't have any assassins.
Yeah.
They just don't have it. And Colorado does. And their assassins are also like the elite.
Yeah, do they have a Travis Hunter?
No.
Do they have a Shador?
Well,
No.
you
But
thought
they
they had
also
a
don't
guy
have
in a
anything.
Caden Jenkins who was a pretty big baller.
No,
we
yeah.
haven't necessarily seen it because the secondary hadn't got flushed out that much, but in the opportunity, he's fallen down next to Wester, the biggest play of the. You know what I mean?
So that's where the team is overall elevated. But
you know, it would have
that's
been
what they're
better to
missing.
have run over Wester for pass interference, and then they take a snap at the 25, right? Or is it in the end zone? Is it different?
It depended where he hit him.
How about you just keep your feet and bat it down?
Yeah,
That'd been great.
yeah.
But,
Or how
hey,
about not taking the wrong rush on the edge, which they did, where it was supposed to be, oh, my goodness, the young man that had Garmin Randolph had a pretty good. I thought Linton played well, but, again, they took the wrong angle. We know it's over now, Baylor, BYU.